little technical issues. Hopefully we have vanquished the gremlins once and for all this afternoon. Now, if you've just joined us, remember that you can send through any questions that you may have on #SafariLive or on Twitter or on the YouTube chat. Now, we've come down to Twin Dams at the moment because, well, it's hot and we were looking for ellies like I was saying earlier. So my plan was to try and find some elephants. We did find ellies, but unfortunately they disappeared down into the Mulawati and we're marching straight to where James was. So I thought rather than having two vehicles and elephants close to where that den was, that I would leave them and let them go down, and maybe James will get a view of them and might get all of them in the same sighting, which would be absolutely splendid and a wonderful way for James to start his working cycle. Now, I'm sure he's absolutely thrilled with the fact that he's got to see that cub, and that new den site looks absolutely amazing. Well, not new den site, but the fallen over log den site, which I haven't seen just yet, looks amazing, and it seems as though everyone's been getting thoroughly spoiled by that little cat. So we're going to probably carry on. Twin Dams seems to have not very much happening at it. There's not even too many terrapins to look at or any of the woodland kingfishers that I was hoping would be around. So I'm going to try and see what else there is. I did see a waterbuck backside disappearing here somewhere, so I'm going to just try see if I can find them quickly. It was just up ahead here. They went into this little thicket in front of me, so I want to try and quickly see if we can find them. It's always nice to catch up with the antelope species, and then hopefully we'll find some more ellies or a leopard. Like I was saying, I wanted to find elephants and then leopard to start off my new year, and so I managed to see some rather flighty elephants, and now it's just to try and find a leopard somewhere in all of this. Now, I've got no idea where any of the leopards are. I haven't been able to catch up with Scott or Noel at all. Scott's gone on leave, and Noel I haven't yet seen today, so I have no idea where any of our have been, where they've moved around, what their kind of general pattern of movement has been. So this is kind of blind guesswork at the moment and driving in areas where I think maybe we'll find a leopard, but so far we haven't seen too many signs. Now, I'm curious to know if Hosana has been back to Djuma or if he's been seen mostly on Chitwa, as was the case when I was here during December. Yeah, I don't think he even made an appearance on this particular property in Djuma. He was all on Chitwa for that entire time. So I wonder if it's the same has been true of the last few weeks. Now, Sens, do you see where those waterbuck went? They've just disappeared. They were here somewhere. I'm sure I saw one disappearing into this area. Well, it seems as though maybe they've gone northwards in the Mulawati. They could have gone up the Mulawati drainage, which is entirely possible, so we'll just go that direction and have a little look. Hopefully there won't be any gremlins inside there. There shouldn't be from this particular spot. We should be okay. Let's just see. No, they seem to have disappeared. Okay, well, that's alright. We'll just carry on. I think what I'm going to do is check probably Leadwood Road and go up towards Cheetah Cut Line, and because it's quite warm, maybe Chitwa Dam would be a lovely place to go spend a bit of time this afternoon. I think maybe a little bit later we might see our ellies coming down to drink there, so even though we've seen them, it'd be nice to show all of you our ellies as well. But definitely no waterbuck that I can see here, so we'll carry on and see what else is around these corners. But the bush looks absolutely beautiful at the moment. It's clean and crisp and there's green in it, and it's dry still for this time of the year. I mean, it's not exactly, you know, full of water everywhere, but it does look really nice after this little bit of rain that we've had, and this bright blue sky contrasts so nicely with the green. It's just a very pretty sort of day to be out in the bush. Other than that, it's about 4 million degrees in the sun. It's very pleasant to be out here and driving around and smelling all the smells and hearing all the sounds of all the birds that are around, and, well, just generally being back in the bush. It's always nice to get back into it after a little bit of a break. You kind of forget how much you enjoy it until you go away a little bit, and then you realize that it's just the best thing to be out here. I wonder if there's a little hornbill nest here. I saw a hornbill just fly in towards this dead leadwood in front of me here, so I just want to have a little look if maybe there's a nest somewhere. There's also another bird, Sens, if you see on that left-hand branch, there's a bird sitting up there, which I want to have a little look at quickly and see what that is. That is a red-billed oxpecker that is sitting on top of that branch, so it's on that bottom left branch. There we go. It's just kind of tucked up on the apex of that corner. There it is. So you can see it's a very hot red-billed oxpecker. Its mouth is wide open, and it's breathing very, very heavily, and that's just trying to get rid of any of that heat and try and, much like a dog would do, pant in order to try and cool that body down. You can also see how the wings are opened a little bit. There is a small little breeze that's blowing, and so when they open their wings like that, that breeze then funnels between the wing and the body, and it allows them to be able to also just cool down a little bit and try and get some sort of airflow between those areas. Now, this is the tree that I was talking about that I think the hornbill nest might be, because there was a hornbill that flew here, flew away, and then flew back again, but I haven't seen anything come out or come back from there. So I want to just go around the corner and see if there's any nice little holes. Hornbills will often use holes like this, and particularly these dead trees. They have the most beautiful kind of places for those birds to nest, and so you find they go into those areas and they will try and kind of figure it out and find a place to build their nest and then hopefully have their little chicks. Now, no, it doesn't seem like there's any sign of it, so we're going to carry on, see what else we can find. While we do that, let's go across to James Hendry, who must be basking in the glorious sunshine and the fact that he's looking at a little leopard.
Well, basking is certainly one way of putting it. Melting to death is another. We did reverse out of here to go and sit in the shade for a little while you were offline. We've come back now. The cub, I think, is just too hot. She's still inside. He or she is still inside and not looking like emerging any time too soon. So, look, we'll hang around here a bit longer. My sadness, of course, is that there are lots of other people who want to come here. And while I think maybe they've increased it to 2 vehicles per sighting, I'm not sure what the case is at the moment. If we won't get another car in here with a view. So if anyone else does come in, I'm afraid we're going to have to skydaddle away. But we might try and come back a bit later. We'll just give them a few more minutes, and then we'll head out. We literally can't actually sit here for too much longer. VM and I are in imminent danger of becoming puddles. So enjoy the sight of Thandi. We'll keep hoping the little one comes out. Now, Scarlett, you're wondering, the million-dollar question, of course, is can male leopards recognize their own offspring? The answer is, I think, yes, but nobody knows for sure. I've just read a fascinating book, and if you can get hold of it, it's by an American, now, what is he now? He's a neurobiologist, basically. I wouldn't call that to his face, because I think he's probably much more sophisticated than that. But in his first incarnation as a scientist, he was a primatologist, and he spent a lot of time with the baboons in the Mara. And his name's Robert Sapolsky, Robert Sapolsky, and he's at Stanford at the moment, a professor there of various different things. And it's the most wonderful book. It's called A Primate's Memoir. And I will get around to why it's relevant to this discussion now. But he makes a huge amount he talks a lot about how the baboons youngsters are theirs or not. There is certainly an element of doubt, and no one is really quite sure, and because of that uncertainty, of course, it reduces the infanticide that occurs in the troop. Now, I think you'll find that the same goes for this situation here. I think you'll find that because Tingana is the territorial male here, and he has mated with Thandi, I'm pretty sure that he reckons that this cub is his, and perhaps because of the incursions of that other new male, perhaps his continued or unusually unusually frequent presence in this area is a result of him not wanting that other male coming along and killing this cub, because the other male, who's new to the area, will almost certainly know, well, he will definitely know that this cub is not his. Now, were Tingana to just come across a youngster in the absence of the mother, would he then know? I don't know. I suspect that they do, and there was a lovely interaction with Tingana and Hosana not too long ago when Steve did his interview drive, and you'll meet Steve. He's joining us again tomorrow full time. Steve had a wonderful sighting of Tingana and Hosana together, and Hosana wandered nonchalantly up to... What's he looking? No, she's not looking at anything. Hosana wandered nonchalantly up to Tingana and just kind of went to sleep next to him, and all the while Tingana hissed at him, but didn't show any overt aggression. Now, he wouldn't normally tolerate a leopard, a male leopard, certainly within that sort of proximity. So yes, I do think they recognize their youngsters, but nobody knows for sure at what stage that happens, or if it's a sort of question of deductive reasoning. Do they think, well, this leopardess is in my territory, I've mated with her, so therefore this must be my youngster? Or do they actually have some kind of familial smell? Do they smell this youngster is mine? Does it smell familiar? I don't know. Oh my goodness gracious me, Ralph Kirsten all the way up in the Maasai Mara has got a spectacular thing to show you. It is a cheetah, he's showed you that, but the cheetah has done something naughty.
And it's blocked, it's our fucking sighting. Yes, thanks, James. Well, we have been sitting and waiting and waiting and sitting and watching and sitting, and it has been a very exciting few minutes. The Hodari went into the thicket, and we were driving along the thicket just trying to see and re-spot him again, and out of the blue, it looks like a little steenbok, came racing through, and we saw Hodari hot on its heels going, but disappearing off into the thicket. And so we've had to race around on the other side, and we've managed to relocate, and this is now the end result. So he's obviously quite good at what he's just done, because it was first go and he got the prize. So I think he's just resting a little bit now up in the shade, and the beauty of this entire little thing that's happened here is we're the only ones with permits allowed to come in this close. So the rest of all the other vehicles need to sit far away and just watch us as a vehicle. So very privileged as me as the driver here, but all of you being able to see this. It's only us that is watching this right now live on Safari Live. What a beaut. Well done, Hodari. Good boy. He was so fast. That was absolutely incredible. Magnificent to watch. And it's such a shame that we couldn't get that on film, but we struggled to even see it with our own eyes. It was so fast. Just a blur in the thicket. And we've just tried to judge where this would have ended up, and we've got it quite right. So a few firsts today, the first of the first time I've had a kill. Wonderful. Wonderful. What a day. He's obviously expended quite a bit of energy. Hasn't started feeding yet, I don't think. He's asphyxiated it, stopped it from breathing, and so it is dead. Now, Mr. Jones, you're wondering why he's not eating the kill already. Well, I think he's quite happy with where it is. So he's, I think it's a little bit like what you would feel like after a heavy run, and then and after the run, immediately eating. It's not the nicest of ways to eat a meal immediately after a run. So I think he's just catching his breath, and then he'll probably start feeding. So, lovely little situation we have here. Wow! I still can't believe that we just witnessed that. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And yeah, he's expended quite a bit because this lager is quite deep. So I think this little steenbuck tried to throw him in the thickets and also like the little river line. So there might have been quite a bit of slipping and falling and diving and in this brush. Now, First Lady Shah, you're wondering what kind of research is going on with this cheetah, with that collar on. Well, that's a radio collar, so that will send out a signal and give the whereabouts of this cheetah, and so then the researchers can track its movements first and foremost, and then obviously see where the territories are and who they come into contact with, and there'll be a lot of different data that will be collected, but it's first and foremost to track exactly where this cheetah goes and moves, and so then they can gather their data and try to help the species in many different ways, but research hits many different areas, but that collar is on for the best interests of the cheetah, and they do hold them in high regard. So don't worry, they will monitor the tightness of it, and if need be they will loosen it. You see there the other rungs that they can make it looser, but it mustn't be too loose because then it can be a hamper as well. They don't want it moving around when it's at high speed or being able to get caught on any branches, etc., because then he could hang himself. So this is well researched, the way that they have now put these collars on these animals, so I wouldn't worry about him. Well, and it just shows, didn't stop him from making a very efficient kill. So, wow, what an exciting little scene that unfolded with us here, and just a good job we hung with him and we didn't go and get impatient. But while we sit here, we're going to come back to us again. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere, but we're going to send you on down to Tristan to see another different spotted cat.
Well, it wouldn't be the new year without having a sighting of our favorite little male cub, and that is little Hosana. So he's not so little anymore, but he is relaxing and resting underneath the tree. We said we would try and find a leopard, and so, well, our luck has struck upon us, because he's lying right next to a mud wallow close to one of the main roads. He's just sort of tucked in underneath there, and it's actually quite difficult to see unless you sort of glance at the pan very carefully. You wouldn't have really been able to pick him up, but he is about as hot as I think everybody else is out here. So he's found himself a small little shady spot there, which seems to be absolutely perfect, and he's now having a really good nap. You'll also notice with him that he's breathing really fast. That's because of the heat, but his tummy is quite round as well, so it seems as though he's been having a good festive season, much like many of us, and has probably overeaten a little bit, and he's really come into his own. It's been so amazing watching this cat grow up over the last year for me, and to see how he's developed from kind of being left alone and then going into this hunting animal that he's become, and he's really does seem to be able to get it right quite a lot. We've seen him a number of times now with food, and so he seems to be taking to adult life just fine. Now, of course, he's not really an adult just yet. I still call him a sub-adult. He hasn't reached 2 years old yet, so he's still got a long way to go until he's one of the adult males. But like I say, he's really taken to this existence of being a solitary male very, very well. I'm not sure we could also call him a solitary male, and because he tends to be following around all kinds of other leopards most of the time. And so for those of you who don't know who Hosana is, he's a son of a very famous leopard from this area called Kruger, and so he was born to her as the last litter she had until she disappeared, and then he's been on his own and kind of moves around a lot on the southern parts of Djuma and Chitwa, which is where he is now. He's just on the northern part of Chitwa, on the southern boundary of Djuma, that area. And he's a special cat because one is probably one of the most relaxed leopards we've got, but two, he seems not to follow the books at all. in that he just tries to spend a lot of time with a lot of the other leopards. So we've seen him with Thandi, with Shadow, with Tingana, and he doesn't seem to care too much what their reaction is. He just trying to kind of snuggles in there and manages to find a way to appease them, and they kind of spend time together. So it's fascinating to watch him go about business. Now, Atul, you want to know what sort of size is Hosana in comparison to Tingana? Well, I mean, he's getting there. He's getting bigger all the time. So I saw some pictures of him from yesterday morning. I think Noel had him yesterday morning on a termite mound. I don't know. I saw some photos of him on a termite mound somewhere, and he's definitely getting bulkier and bulkier, but he's still nowhere near the size of Tingana. He's not quite as tall as Tingana yet, and definitely not nearly as bulky. He doesn't have that big, massive neck and shoulders that Tingana's got. He is starting to develop this little dewlap, and he is bulking, but he's still got a long way to go. I would say he's probably maybe 2 years away from being a similar size, but he is going to be a big leopard. I think he's going to be a very stocky, very thick-set leopard, and I'm pretty sure he's going to dominate somewhere, wherever it may be. Hopefully it's somewhere in this area that we get to still carry on seeing him, but I hope that wherever he dominates, we'll be able to follow his path. But I think he's going to be a really big boy when he gets a little bit older. He's fed really well through his formative years, both with Kruger when she was around and feeding him. He got a lot of food from her, and now as a youngster, he's been managing to feed himself pretty well as well. So I think he's got enough nutrition to have grown quite nicely, and hopefully his genetics also means that he is a big boy. Now, I believe James has got something very interesting that might fly away quickly, so let's jump across to him and see what it is.
We do, and unsurprisingly, it is not a bat, but a bird. It is Mr. or Mrs. Wahlberg, sitting here having a drink out of a puddle, being shouted at by a number of squirrels. And we're not far from Thandi. We just watched a spectacular impala fight, not too far away also. Unfortunately, we couldn't really get a proper view. And we're just going to hang around this area, I think, probably for much of the drive. There do seem to be some elephants around, and we'll go back towards Thandi a little bit later, especially given that there are impala fighting with each other, which will immediately alert her. They're actually just going to pop out onto the road now, just behind the Wahlberg's eagly. Now, I haven't managed to see whether these two Wahlberg's eaglies have raised a baby or not this year, so we'll go and check that out. The mixed pair down at the bottom of the south of the reserve have definitely. They've got a little baby. But whether or not this pale form pair has managed, I don't know. Isn't it wonderful? I don't know why it is that seeing a bird on the ground like this is almost more special than seeing them sitting in a tree. I suppose it's just the novelty value of it. Rather hoping it will take off and display its magnificent wings. Alrighty, we're going to get back across the Mara now in the next 13 seconds or so. The cheetah with Ralph, I believe, are having their meal, and they're very excited to show you their table manners.
Thanks, James. And yes, everybody, this cheetah has started now to chew on the back end. It's had a little bit of a rest. I think it's caught its breath, and now it's starting to get in there. So if anybody is a little bit squeamish, I advise that you potentially don't watch now, but it's probably going to get opened up and fed on. So that's how the cheetah will be feeding on. It seems more so a bushbuck, folks. I thought just with the color as it flashed through the thicket, I thought it was a steenbok, but it turns out that it was a little bit larger than that, and it is actually a female bushbuck. Now, I also would like to just apologize to everybody, because in all the excitement of when we were rushing through the bush here trying to find this cheetah, I think I did use some very bad language, and I I seriously apologize for that, and I think I got caught up in the action. But it is no excuse, and sorry for that, especially for the kids out there. That's not what you should be saying. Right, back to the action as this cheetah starts to really get stuck in on the back end. And there were lots of vehicles around, but nobody could really get a view in, and the cheetah did start to get a little bit nervous, and we thought at a moment she might actually drag it down into the lager to get away from everybody, but the vehicles weren't able to get such a good view. So it seems everybody has left, and the cheetah has now calmed down and subsequently started feeding. So wonderful. We've waited for this. It's been a very patient wait, and we were wholly rewarded in the end. So that's what I often say about safaris and wildlife and game drives. It's very much like fishing. If you don't have a line in the water, you're not going to get any bites and you're not going to catch any fish. And if you're not driving around and trying your luck and trying your patience, you're not going to see magnificent scenes like this. So he seems to be a very efficient hunter, as I said before, because he went about his business very well. Now, Coast Rider, you're wondering if there's a preferred time for cheetah to hunt and kill. Well, Coast Rider, they do generally hunt during the day, because they've sort of taken that evolutionary step and that line, because of all the other large predators which hunt normally in the hours of darkness. And they use that to their advantage. So most of the other predators have become nocturnal, whereas the cheetah, in order to avoid them, has become diurnal. So during the day is his time, because he also hunts by sight. So he has very good daytime vision, but not particularly well at night. There is some odd cases of them hunting at night and killing and feeding as well, but it's generally mostly done during the day. And this is a perfect size for this cheetah. That's enough for him to feed on. He could have actually probably feed on this bushback for a couple of days. So, folks, we continue watching this unfold, and we're going to probably see it open it up completely and hopefully watch it for the next little while. But in the meantime, let's send you on over to Taylor, who's got one of those very tall animals.
Well, Archie and I have just been in hysterics because this little giraffe is so cute. It is tiny, 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 tiny. I reckon probably only between a month and 2 months old. It's not very big at all. But the funny thing about it is that it was like it was feeling its teeth or its gums with its tongue. And we know giraffe got exceptionally long tongues as it is. Here, it's doing it again. Look, I don't know why it's it. Watch. It's like someone's put peanut butter on its palate, and it just keeps wiggling its tongue around. It is so sweet. Oh, I think it's gone shy now, and it doesn't want to do it, probably because myself and Archie were laughing so loudly, but it was so precious. It was so tiny. Feeling a little bit embarrassed now, and going back to Mom, who's in the thickets just feeding. Oh, that was so, so sweet. What is that walking behind there? Just Thompson's, because I was just double checking. But off it goes. And it's a teeny tot in comparison. Even look at the shrubs. That's how you know how small it is. And when it goes and stands next to Mom, if it does go and stand next to Mom, you'll really, really see how precious that is. It's again, it's just wiggling that tongue around. I know I do that sometimes if I've got a rough edge on my tooth or something feels strange in my mouth, you have an ulcer. I think it's natural for you to touch it with your tongue. So I don't know Or unless it's also just learning about what its tongue is and what it has to do. I don't think it would have started on any vegetation just yet. A little bit too young. But there's Mom. Just coming out. Just keeping a close full eye. See if you can work your tongue very well. Obviously, when animals are quite they learn from copying the adults. A lot of it is also natural instinct. But by watching what the adults eat and then trying, I think the best examples have to be little elephants. When they try and use their trunks and use their feet like spades. They see the adults doing it, but they're not quite sure what they're supposed to do. It's having a scratch and wiggling its tongue at the same time. Now, Anupam, you're wondering what is the lifespan of a giraffe? They can live between, I'd say, 25 and about 30 years or so. Not really much more than that. Even 25 is particularly old for a giraffe. But remember, life is tough out here. So a lot of the animals don't actually make it to, the age that they can reach. They often die of an illness, they become weak, they fall predator, they fall prey to a predator, that's what I meant to say. And speaking of predators, Archie, our hyenas have finally woken up. Now, there was also a couple of hyenas that were scattered out. I counted four of them, I think. And they've just got off their little mound, which they were resting on. Now, there are super clans out here. I mean, I've never seen such big clans of hyena in my life. And they would quite easily be able to take down a young giraffe like that if it were to be separated from its mum. Just doing a little old towards us. Very nice in the golden light, though. They're such creepy looking creatures, the hyenas, but I love them. That one's not a particularly pretty one. Sometimes you do find some hyenas with some nice features. Here comes another one. I think this might be a female here. There was one that I saw sitting that had her mammary glands were nice and full. So whether she was expecting or whether she had cubs somewhere, it was a bit difficult to tell, as they have been laying down. Now I can hear the crowned lapwings also yapping away. See, the hyena was looking back at the third one, which is just to the right of the one that's furthest back on a termite mound, still not ready and not wanting to wake up just yet. Oh, they're coming straight towards us as well. Leave that giraffe alone. It's too cute. Maybe that little giraffe can just lick the hyenas. That was so sweet, the way it was moving its tongue around. Let's see. They might come right up towards us, which could be quite nice. We parked a healthy distance away from these hyenas. Just go to show you, though, how comfortable and relaxed the animals are out here. Particularly the predators. I don't mind it so much. Was this the female? No, this might be the girl. I may have made a mistake. Let me check. Yes. Off we go. Next one. It's like a line of hyena. It's the factory shop. Pisces, Bobby, you said that you love the swagger that hyenas walk with. I also like it. However, my favorite swag in an animal's step has to be a musk elephant bull. Now look at this hyena. Change direction just a little bit. Maybe not as confident as the other one. I made a mistake. The one in front was the female. This is a boy coming at the back. Hello, big boy. No, now look how curious he is. And they're such weird looking things. Big shoulders, sloping backs. Oh. And now? And now, hyena? He heard me say all those things and now he's not so certain. Are you wondering what we are and what's inside here? Oh, he's getting out of here. He's listening very closely, though, to what I was saying, which is quite nice. Let's see if we can get another view of our little giraffe, seeing as our hyena are now gone. Goodness, it's all happening in this little spot here. Quite a productive little patch. There's some Thompson's gazelle that we're chasing each other around. Let's see if this little one is going to give us one last smile. No, don't run! I don't want to scare it. No, come back! Sorry! It's been so relaxed the whole time around us. We've been here for a while with this little giraffe. I think you just used that as an excuse to stretch your legs. I bet you've been wanting to run all afternoon and Mom hasn't let you. And then now you can say, "Oh, she scared me, Mom." Look at the... As I said that, almost as if its ossicones pricked up. But it didn't. Its ears, of course, pricked forward, looking back at Mom. And we know that giraffe communicate through body language. So it'll probably be waiting for a response, a reprimanding from Mom, saying, "Don't you go too far away." Now, Sinak, you're wondering if the hyena could attack that baby giraffe. I actually just mentioned that just a little while ago. And I said the clans are big enough out here that they could easily take down something like this, especially such a young giraffe. And there is another hyena that's just popped up to the right, in between these two gardenia trees on the other side of that lugger. Almost. There we go. So there's obviously a big clan that live around here, so Mum will have to keep a watchful eye. Although, I mean, I don't know how far on top a giraffe would be in terms of a meal for a hyena. We know hyenas are exceptionally skilled hunters, but they might choose to go for something slightly different. Maybe they'll rather try and steal something, or they'll go for a topi that's sitting down, or a young zebra foal, which there are plenty of. Remember, giraffe are also equally dangerous. They've got those very powerful legs, and we haven't yet seen, or I haven't seen it live. Imagine watching a lioness try and take on a giraffe and watching how powerful they are. You'll have to wait, otherwise you'll have to Google and see some footage of giraffe defending their young from lions and all sorts of other predators. Right, the sun is about to go down here in the Masai Mara. The sun will still be quite far away from setting in the Sabi sand, so let's hop back on board with no one else other than Mr. James Hendry and see. I have a question for you, James. What are your New Year's resolutions?
I wish the sun was about to set here. On account of the blinding heat I feel, I'm going to stop there in the shade for a few seconds. And listen to the gentle call of the southern boo-boo. Just up there, in these lovely shady trees that are bathing this drainage system in coolth, well, relative coolth. Taylor asked about New Year's resolutions. Taylor, I gave up making New Year's resolutions, I think, when I turned 5. Because I realized very soon on that would be a complete waste of time for me. Vim, you? Have you to have more regular haircuts, perhaps? No? No, Vim had a professional haircut. Everybody looks very smart.
That's the third one he did last year.
Third one. He had 3 last year. Can you believe it? Alrighty, let's go back to Tristan now. Hosana is feeling very similar to the way I am right now. Thirsty.
Well, indeed, he, I think, has decided that it is that time of the afternoon to try and quench his thirst. It is incredibly hot, and he was sitting under the tree, and a few birds started chirping by the waterhole, and that kind of triggered him to start moving of him, and as he laps up some of this cooler water, and he's got himself a nice little spot there because he can drink without having to be in any of the sun. He's got a nice little shady sort of angle in which to be able to quench his thirst. But how beautiful is that? What a way to start off the year. I know it's not exactly high action, but just to see a leopard drinking, and particularly when you can get front on like this and see him perfectly, is absolutely phenomenally good. So I'm pretty happy with that, and it's a good way, like I say, to start. And it's always good to see Hosana as well. He's such a character and a leopard that we spend so much time with over the last year that it's always good to kind of just see how he is. And I haven't seen him for quite some time, so it's nice just to see how he's been doing and to see how good a condition he's actually in. When he stood up just now, I was having a nice look at him. He's got a really healthy set of shoulders now. Little dewlap is starting to form quite nicely, and look at the size of those paws. If you look at the relation to his head and the paw sort of size difference, you can see his paws are starting to get quite big now as well. So he's going to be a big boy later in life. Of course, they are splayed at the moment, and that's because of the softer mud, and all his pressure is on those front legs at the moment, and that's why we're seeing that. But look at that. How cool is that? Shame boy, are you thirsty? I'm not surprised. It is very warm out there. Maybe a few too many apple juices for New Year last night, and that's why he's getting tucked into some water. But there we go. I wonder where he's going to go from here. I'm pretty sure he's going to try and find himself a shady spot. I would be very surprised if he decided to start moving now. It is still too warm for a cat to really be out in the sun, so maybe he's just come for a quick drink and then he's going to find himself another little shady section in which to lie down. But something definitely caught his interest just now, because he was sitting sleeping, he yawned, and then all of a sudden he shot bolt upright and sort of stared towards the north. And so I don't know if maybe he heard some impalas around, maybe there was a warthog that was coming down, because there will be warthogs that will move towards mud wallows like this. We were discussing it right at the beginning of drive. In hot weather you'll often have things like impalas and warthogs and those kind of things coming to these areas, and so maybe something like that was moving around, and that's what caught his attention, although he seems not to be too phased by all of that right now. Shame boy, have you got a little bit of an itch on the back of your head? He seems to have had an itch around that right ear for quite some time now. He actually, every now and then you can see he scratches it a little bit raw, but it's not too bad. It's not anything to worry about. Maybe it's a little bit of something that just irritates him around there. Also, you'll find a lot of ticks get into that area around the ears. That's a commonplace, particularly on leopards, because they don't have that ability to have a family that grooms them. They've got to groom themselves, and so sometimes you do get little ticks around the bases of their ears, and they do scratch at it and try and get rid of them. So could be why he's been doing it quite a bit. I wonder if he's going to go back to the exact same spot, but you can see that dewlap now just hanging down from his chin. Adele, difficult to say. You're wondering what area I think Hosana will claim. Well, at the moment, you know, he's moving in such a small section. He moves from Chitwa to Little Gari to Chitwa to Little Gari, and I can't remember the last time I actually saw him on Djuma itself. So he seems to have moved a little bit south, and so I don't know if he's going to kind of claim this little section now and try and utilize this area, but he's going straight back to the bush that he first lay in and going to lie down. So I'm just going to reposition ourselves. But I don't know if he's maybe going to try and take this section. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of competition because Tumba is around, there's Quarantine, there's this new male that's called the Hukumuri male, which is actually, for those of you who don't know, Hukumuri is a drainage line that is on an area called Ottawa, which is a part of Singita, the northern part of Singita, and it is a big prominent riverbed system, much like the Mulawati that flows there, and it's a great place for both leopard and lion to have cubs. I know the Ottawa Pride used to have their cubs there quite a lot, and a number of different females. There was the Shangwa female that used to have her little ones there sometimes, and so there are a few different ones that use that area. So I think he's a offspring from one of the females in that section, but I'm sure that's where his name comes from. It's not that we've named him that. He was identified by some of the other rangers. So I just want to try and quickly get past these guys. Unfortunately, they've kind of parked in a way. I'm just going to go past Mike quickly. Thanks. So he's around. So Hosana's got to think about all of these different cats at this stage. He's got to worry about these males, and so I'm hoping that he'll get lucky and he'll be able to take this little sort of Chitwa, Little Gari section for now until he gets strong enough and big enough to then be able to start pushing outwards a little bit. But he definitely is going to have a tough time because, like I say, Quarantine is starting to push onto Chitwa, and we know then there's this other male coming from the west, and well, Tingana is not done yet either, and so he's not going to take kindly to a big male leopard. But you can see when he sits like that, look at the size of his neck and head, it's just starting to get much bigger. Right, but we're going to sit with Hosana a while longer. I'm sure he's going to get up at some point. He's definitely staring up to the north, and so maybe there's something around here that he might be interested in hunting. Now, something else that has been hunting already today and seems to have provided much entertainment is one of the other spotted cats from the Masai Mara that is currently sitting with Ralph.
Yes, everyone, so that's all gone quiet again, as Hodari, he was lying up on that termite mound when we were watching him earlier, and then it was those few magical moments, and now we've got him on the kill, but he's only fed a little bit, and now he's back to lying down again. I think he's quite happy that he's in the brush here. Nobody saw this kill happen, animal-wise, and it's very well covered from the sky, so you won't really be able to see any blood on the ground as well, which will alert the vultures. And vultures coming in will alert everything else, from the jackals to the hyenas to even lions and even leopards as well. Everybody can take their little share from the spoils of cheetah kills. But it seems like this bushbuck is pretty safe from the other predators, and this cheetah has done fantastically well in firstly subduing it, and secondly where it's been subdued and killed and actually now, because it's an immediate stash exactly where it was killed. So perfect. I think this Hodari might be feeding on this for the next couple of days, unless the smell gets out and the jackal and hyena come in. But otherwise, I think his prey is safe for now. It's wonderful, wonderful. That he was looking like he wanted to hunt. He was looking hungry, and well, that's exactly how it played out. Now, Kathy in Ohio, you're wondering if cheetah ever eat together. Yes, they can, Kathy, but it is a little bit of an aggressive affair around the food. So that's where, like for instance with the coalition, those 5 musketeers, they will eat around a meal, but there is lots of bashing with their claws in each other's faces, and I'm pretty sure that new scratch on D'Artagnan's nose probably comes from one of his partners, and that's probably been around food as well. So they do feed, but together sometimes, but it is quite a squabble. And with the females, she'll obviously make a kill and allow her cubs and so on to feed on it. So there's not a problem, but it gets a bit squabbly, as it does with lions as well. They're all allowed to come in and feed, but there's a lot of squabbling going on. And very often nails get sunk into each other's noses, which I'm sure is not very nice. And that's where you see a lot of these scars on the cats, is very often down to while they're feeding. So it's not always just fighting, it's actually around food. That's when animals generally fight the most. So, folks, for me, this has been an absolutely fantastic day. We haven't moved very far. Once we found this cheetah, Manu and I, we were driving for quite a long time until we found it. And then that whole scene played out. Wow. And eventually actually seeing this new cheetah with a lovely bushbuck that it's been able to kill and keep for its dinner. And so, folks, for the first day of the year, I'm glad to have done my best for you, and Manu and I can now go home with happy hearts that we've started the year well. We're going to head you off to Taylor, but we'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Righty, we're sitting here with a Wahlberg's eagly. Sorry about that loss of Taylor, not sure what happened. This eagle just caught a little lizard, and we followed it back down towards the nest, and we did find the baby earlier. Now the little baby is in that nest. Unfortunately, it hasn't stuck its head up from the first time we saw it sort of perched on the end, and I'm pretty sure that this parent fed it the little lizard that it caught. Poor lizard was enjoying its first day of the new year. Let's sneak a little bit forward, Vim, and see if we can't see the youngster. think. Yeah, there it is. You can see it now. There's the little baby. So they have produced a baby. They didn't last year. You can see the baby feels much the same as I do. Very hot indeed. Exhibiting the gular flutter. Or basically panting. Isn't it sweet? It's actually not that sweet. Young birds, especially when they get to this age, look sort of... they lose the cuteness of being chicks. Now, I reckon that this bird is probably about a month old. The incubation period is about 45 to 46 days, apparently. It's quite an exact figure. But because Wahlberg's eagles are so ubiquitous, I think it's quite easy for them to find out exactly what the incubation period is. But that little bird will only take 75 days, that's 2 and a bit months, to fly out of that nest, and very shortly after that it will have to migrate north. Now apparently they do migrate in flocks when they go north, which is quite interesting. So although they are pairs here, they do migrate in flocks. Sorry, Sinak, I missed that question. What was that again? Oh, what will they feed their babies? Sinak, they feed their babies what they eat. In this case, it was a small lizard. But Wahlberg's eagles, yeah, they're like reptiles, lizards and skinks and that sort of thing. They will take small mammals. You'll hear squirrels shouting at them. But this thing, they don't obviously have teeth, so they can't chew things up and then feed them to their babies. So often it has to be something fairly whole. So they'll catch small things, small reptiles for a baby like this. They could also bring a bird up, of course, and then sort of tear it into little pieces. Maybe we've seen them with mongoose before. They could bring a mongoose up to the nest, tear it into small pieces, and then feed that to the youngster. Okay, I think what we're going to do now is go back towards the sun again, of course, blinding on the right-hand side. Go back towards Thandi. We've got about an hour left of the drive. And so let's just go and see once more if her youngster is not out. And Louise says, while I do that, we're going to go across to Thandi's delinquent little brother. It's a bit unkind.
Well, James, I think you are going to get yourself in trouble if you call our young fella a delinquent. He is sometimes all over the show, but I don't know if delinquent is the right word. I find Hosana just completely curious at everything. He sometimes, I suppose, can be a little bit of a delinquent child, particularly when he's with his older sisters and trying to get food out of them, in particular Shadow and Thandi. So he, I suppose, does get up to all kinds of nonsense. He really is a phenomenal leopard, and we were touching on it a little bit earlier, and his relationship with all these other leopards around here, and we were sort of discussing where he's going to be dominant and whether I think he'll be dominant in this area. And it's hard to say with him because he just doesn't provoke the same reaction that I've ever seen from a male leopard in terms of other leopards in this area. So, you know, normally you would see Hosana would evoke an emotion from Shadow and Thandi that would be probably quite aggressive, particularly I would have thought from Shadow with her cub, and then obviously now Thandi with a new one. And then Tingana, I would have thought, now that he's starting to get a little bigger, would also have a bit of an issue. But it just seems that none of them really care too much. They growl and hiss at him a little bit, but otherwise they're not really too perturbed, and he kind of lies right there. And it's almost like his demeanor towards them is just one of sheer sort of, I don't care, I'm going to be your friend even if you don't want me to. And he kind of just flops down next to them, and they then really have no choice. So it is amazing to kind of watch him go about his business and see what he does get up to. And I'm curious to see what would happen if he actually came across Thandi now, because I think Thandi now is in a very different space to what she was when she had Tamba. I think the likelihood of her being polite towards Hosana is probably not as good as what it was a few months ago. Now you can see he's having a really good nap. Every now and then those little feet are twitching, so he's obviously dreaming of whatever impala he's been chasing around, or whatever he managed to find himself at some point in the last couple of days, because definitely has had a meal somewhere. And the fact that he's come for water at this time of the day would probably indicate that he finished that meal at some stage this morning. Maybe a little baby impala or a little duiker or a scrub hare or something like that. I don't think it was too substantial. You can see the tummy's not too round. It's not like he's eaten himself stupid, but he's definitely got a fairly full belly, which is wonderful news. It's amazing, like I say, how well he's actually adapted to being around. You can see, look at his eyes twitching, so they seem to be kind of landing in that little corner. And you'll find flies do this a lot, particularly the nose and the eye areas. They try and get in there and they're trying to sequester the moisture from those two sections. And also I think he's having a bit of a dream as well, because his paws are also moving at the same time. He is an absolute character. The two young boys that we have in this area, both of them are delightful animals to spend a lot of time with. Between Hosana and Tumba, both of them seem to have this massive amount of character in them, inquisitive, and they kind of go all over the place and look around and try and sort of engage with their environment a lot more than many other leopards that I've seen. So it's absolutely wonderful to have them. And now obviously we're going to have another little young one in the form of Thandi's youngster that hopefully is going to be a firm feature of the next few months. I'm absolutely dying to get to that den, but like I say, I'm super glad that James got a chance to see the little cub today. I'm sure he's brimming with excitement at seeing it. I know James put a lot of effort in, and actually it was James who first found Thandi at the original den site way back when. I can't even remember when that was, in October I think, when he arrived back from the Mara, and he followed her to the termite mound, and that was when it all started. So I'm super glad that James has finally gotten a chance to see the little one. But look at those paws, they're almost wonder if he's dreaming of his New Year's party that he had last night. Maybe he was burning some rubber on the dance floor, as they say, when he was moving his feet around. Senzo, did you have a party last night? Did you dance around a bit? No, you behaved last night, Senzo. I find that very difficult to believe, because Senzo loves to dance around. It doesn't matter if he's a party or not. He's generally got some sort of movement in his hips and likes to kind of bounce around like that. So I would be very surprised if you weren't dancing yesterday, Senzo. Yes, I can see that smile says it all. There's definitely, yes, you were, I'm sure. Senzo says he wasn't, but I don't believe him for a second, because I know how he is. He likes to have a little bit of a dance around. And Louise, no, I didn't dance last night. I was a picture of perfect behavior last night. I was in bed very early and didn't do anything at all, which is of course absolute nonsense. I was out quite late with a whole bunch of friends yesterday. I actually had a really wonderful New Year's. I spent it with all of the friends that I have up in this area, so the guys that do the wild dogs, Grant and Joel, who's a vet in this area, and so we had a really good time last night, and it was actually a wonderful kind of evening. It didn't get too out of hand, which is always a good thing. Right, back to the leopard. Let's not discuss New Year's too much longer. Louise, were you well behaved last night? Louise also came back from leave yesterday. Senzo, was Louise well behaved? No. Senzo's just smiling in the background there. Of course you were, Louise. So Louise says she was very well behaved. Of course you were, Louise. I can tell by the tone of your voice that you were in bed very early last night, and most certainly you were not involved in any New Year's shenanigans. Louise, that I somehow disagree with. Louise says she's the most well-behaved of the entire crew. I feel like that might be a stretch of the imagination. Who is the most well-behaved of the entire crew? I would actually like to know. Maybe this is something that we can have a hashtag Safari Live. Who do you guys think is the most well-behaved and the most misbehaved of the Safari Live crew? Senzo, why are you laughing? Senzo is having a little chuckle at me because he knows full well. Who do you think is the most well-behaved? Who's the most misbehaved? Come on. No. So, Louise, you think Brent Leo Smith is our most misbehaved crew member? I'm not sure. I think it depends on the situation, and there's a number of us that get misbehave from time to time, and so it would be interesting to know. Anyway, let's not carry on with that. We can rather discuss the beauty of Hosana before we get ourselves into trouble at some point, talking about things that we shouldn't be. And he's still completely fast asleep. I actually don't think he's going to move too much from here now that he's had his little drink, unless something comes down and decides to wake him up, which is very possible. And so maybe he'll wake up then, but otherwise I think he's going to just nap away this heat. I actually do see some impalas right in the distance on the other side, and so maybe they'll come down towards this waterhole and wake him up a little bit later. Now, Chris, you were saying, do I think that cats have distinct personalities that you can see? 100% I do. I think that there are very different personalities amongst all of these leopards. I've been fortunate enough to have seen a fair number of leopards in my time in the Sabi Sands, and there's most definitely differences in the behavior of all of them. So if you take, just hypothetically, if we just go through the leopards we're seeing this afternoon, you've got Thandi, who is a very relaxed animal, but has a little bit of a feisty streak to her that she'll often let everybody know exactly what she thinks. She can certainly stamp her authority on any situation and is a little bit kind of like that. And she can be quite shy and secretive, much like her sister Shadow, and that when they don't want to be seen, either of those cats, I promise you will not find them. You'll just walk around in circles looking for them. And so when they don't want to be found, they won't be found. Then you've got a leopard like Hosana, who's, as you can see, just the most relaxed cat in the world. He's quite a sort of goofy character at times and is very curious in things and will always be going around all over the place. Now, that is also because he's young, but there is most certainly different characters. Oh, no. So viewers are saying that, I think you've gotten this all wrong, everybody, but you're all saying that James is the least well-behaved, which it depends on what we're talking about, but James certainly is, I would not put him as the least well-behaved, and Steph for sure is not the most well-behaved of this crew, that is for sure. Senzo, you agree with that? Yes, I agree. Steph is, he looks like he's like the headmaster of our school that we're in, but he's most certainly definitely not the most well-behaved. I would hesitate to say that at any time. In fact, I would not bet my life on that at all. I would like to know from Louise who she thinks is the most well-behaved besides herself, because obviously we've now decided that Louise is the most well-behaved in her mind, but who else she thinks. I think that there's a couple of good candidates. Right, now while Louise thinks about it, and I'll think about who I think my two candidates are and we'll sort of give it a bit of thought, let's go across to, well, apparently the most full of nonsense delinquent child of the Safari Live family, Mr. Henry himself.
I think that is extremely unreasonable. I do not think that I compare in delinquency to Scott Dyson, for example. Scott Dyson is definitely the most delinquent person we have here at Safari Live, followed closely by Brent Leo Smith. The two of them vie, I think, for the most delinquent member of staff here. I might dress a bit strangely from time to time, but I think calling me delinquent for that is not fair. I would say the VM's vote for the best behaved member of staff is our intern, Jake. I think that's quite a good call, actually. Steph is also pretty well behaved. But every so often you can see that Steph was obviously a naughty child who was probably required quite a lot of thrashing as a youngster in order to get him in line. Every so often he lets go of his controlled facade and, well, the mischievous version comes out. Taylor's pretty delinquent as well, isn't she? I guess she's more clown than delinquent, though. Yes, I think those are probably the right ones. Scott Dyson as the most delinquent, Jake as the least. Trying to think. I don't think Zorda has caused any trouble either. I just need to get on the radio if you'll give me 1 second. We're back at Thandi. Sorry, I didn't even tell you where we were. Animal is still static. Mike, 1 out of 5 visual. We're back at Thandi now, of course. No baby in sight. No line up, Mike. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly talk to Mike. Mike, yeah, go for it. I'll pull out when you get here. We're just going to wait and see if a cub comes out. Alrighty, so I'm afraid I thought we were going to be able to sit here for the rest of the drive, but I don't think we will. But that's okay. Maybe we'll get one more glimpse of this little one. They were impala fighting, as I told you before, not far from here. But the noise of their fighting has not managed to rouse her from her slumbers, and I think that she's obviously fairly well fed. Just flicking her tail, lots of flies around. The air you're almost desperate for it to move. You know, I've just come from the coast where it's almost never still, and you hope for the opposite. And here, it's quite nice to have a bit of a breeze, especially in the heat. As you can see, of course, when my cloth flutters, I'm that much cooler than I might be otherwise. Is it easier if I turn this way? I mean, I know that's normally the case, but the camera's at such an odd angle.
Just need to move the cloth now to the other side.
I can't move my cloth. Oh, yes, I should, hey, because the sun is on the other side. Is that better? Okay, good. That's how we'll talk to each other from now on, everybody. Back to the cat, who hasn't moved. I think that the heat of the day is going to mean that she's not going to bring the little one out until it gets much, much cooler. We'll try and sit here until the sun just dips below the tree line. And there's been a bit of a leopard smorgasbord today. I will tell you that Quarantine, her other brother, of course, has been found on Torchwood. So lots of leopards around here, and of course, quite astonishingly, really is the Sabi Sands strength. Now, Tristan's not wrong. Apparently, he says, I'm Lawrence of Arabia on a low budget. I think that's fairly true, but for the fact, of course, that this is a chamois, which is not a very low-budget piece of cloth. I definitely, VM said, why don't we dress like Arabs when we drove down into the sun here? And I thought that was a really good idea. I mean, the only reason we dress like this is because, well, we're supposed to, you know, it's supposed to look very bushy. There's no reason we shouldn't wear grey or khaki-coloured kilts, for example. VM, would you like a khaki-coloured kilt? A kilt? It mustn't be khaki. No, but you can't wear a proper kilt in the bush, VM. It'll look ridiculous.
Nice and cool.
It would be cool, depending on the kind of wool it was made of. Anyway, we're going to give her another 10 minutes or so, and then I think we'll probably have to leave her until tomorrow. It's so nice that she's moved so close to home, just south of the Gowrie Dam, of course, which means that I know that many of you have been seeing her going up to have a drink at the water on the dam cam from time to time. And just in case you are perhaps a new viewer who hasn't seen us before and you're wondering what this spotted sort of patch in the grass is, this is Thandi, an 11-year-old leopardess who'll be 12 this year. I can say that safely now because it is, of course, 2018. And she's got a little baby in here which is now, what would we say? It's almost 8 weeks old? Can't be. Around December, beginning of December. Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks old. Alupam, you're wondering what Thandi means. Well, what people will say is that, I guess it does. It basically means beloved. It means the loved one. Technically speaking, it just means, it's a word for love. In Zulu, not in the Shangaan language that we use, that most of the local people speak up here. There's a hyena coming up from behind there. Can you see him? This is interesting. This is not great. Wake up. She smelt it. The hyena smelt something. I don't think the hyena would be able to get into the den site. In fact, I'm 90% sure the little thing would be totally safe where it is. Thandi, wake up. Now, of course, you find yourself in that completely classic situation of do you interfere? And I know stories of the most non-interfering guides being unable to contain themselves in situations like this when a hyena has got very close. And they've been unable to resist and they've just woken up the mother or tossed something at the hyena to make it go away. Well, thankfully we haven't had to do that. Hyena seems to be backing off. Whew. What a relief. Thandi had no idea. The hyena could easily come around the back here, but I think it's unlikely. And there's no question that Thandi, to a sensitive nose like that, will have left all sorts of scent around this place. And so the hyena will be smelling leopard, wondering why so much leopard smell around here. And just for those of you who are new viewers, of course, if a hyena was to get hold of the cub, it would most certainly kill it. There would be no mercy shown whatsoever. And also the mother, of course, would not make any huge effort to defend it. It would hiss and snarl, but at the end of the day, the hyena would not be chased off by the leopardess, simply because the leopardess is not big enough and strong enough to actually fight a hyena.
Second, I was going to be your little prince from your story, James, and I was going to say I'm not as little as maybe some other members of this crew, and therefore would not be a little prince at all. But our Lawrence of Arabia, with his half chamois clothed face, must be at least doing some good, because the sun is beating. I'm glad we've got some shade, and thank goodness I don't have to resort to a chamois on my face to keep nice and cool. And you can see Hosana is much like James in that he's not using a chamois, but he's using a bush to shove his face into, and to try and make a little bit of sort of shade for himself and just stay as cool as possible. There are some impalas that I saw, like I say earlier, a long way away. They were right up in the background there, so there's a little open clearing in that section over there, so that kind of story, and they were moving across that open clearing. You can see it's a little bit sort of clear, and there's a very narrow gap, so I can't see where they've gone. I was hoping they were going to slowly worm their way from there down towards this pan, but at the moment I don't have any more sort of view of them, and I wonder if that's maybe going to wake him up at some point. What I was really hoping for is there is a warthog that is resident in this area, and often find its mud wallowing at this little pan in the late afternoon. In fact, I've seen that warthog bump into Thandi, Karula, Tamba, so it has a tough time coming to this waterhole to wallow, and maybe because of the rain there's other places to go, and that's why it hasn't come this afternoon. There's quite a number of little puddles around that a warthog can plonk its bottom into when in hot weather, so maybe that's why it's not here. But there we go. Good afternoon. Oh, look at that stretch. Don't you love when leopards do that, when they, or lions and big cats, when they kind of curl their paws in, and they're almost as though they're like hugging themselves as they stretch and get themselves nice and comfortable. I always love that when they do that, and he's done it twice this afternoon so far, so hopefully he'll do it again. I think he's just trying to get into a place where he can kind of rest, and the car's waking him up every now and then. It causes him just to have a bit of a stretch. There we go. Hello, boy. Look at how beautiful that face is. There is not a single scratch on it. His nose is still quite pink, actually. I suppose he's not, I always forget at how old Hosana is. You kind of lose the sort of sight of it because he's so successful as a male leopard, and his size is quite big, and we followed him for so long on his own. It's difficult to remember that he is not even 2 years old, so that pink nose is still fairly acceptable. And if you look at that new male that has been around and has kind of been infiltrating from the western side of Djuma, he's got quite a pink nose, and he's definitely older than 3-4 years old. So sometimes the genetics, they will keep the pink nose. It's not always a sign of age, but his is still very pink. I would expect it to start darkening from the edges fairly shortly, and we'll start to see it getting darker and darker as things go. Although if you look at Shadow, which is the same lineage, hers has stayed pink all the way through her life, and Thandi's has also got a few little pink blotches in it as well, so maybe he's going to be destined to have a pink nose. Him and Tamba, they'll be the exact same. Now I'm not sure if you can hear there. It's stopped now, but there is a sound in the background. And so that sound, I don't know, like I say, if you can pick it up, but there's a cicada going absolutely crazy right near me, and it's basically stridulating, so it's using its legs to tap on a resonating organ inside its abdomen that's covered in a thin layer, and as it hits with its legs, it's much like a drummer hitting, and that's what causes that sound. And so they're talking to each other, and often after rain you do hear this, so really cool to hear. And I'm sure we're going to hear some frogs a little bit later. It's the sounds of summer, that's why I like listening to them. Now Bobby, you were wondering, will the spots on Hosana Hosana's or his ID spots change as he gets older. So no, I'm sure you've heard the saying, a leopard never changes its spots. Well, that's very true, is that a leopard's spots on its face in particular are not going to move too much. You know, when they're young little ones, their spots are still quite sort of close together and they expand out a little bit, and you get the more defined spot pattern that you get when they're a little bit older like this. But once they get to this age, no, their spots are not going to change in any way. They're going to still have the exact same markings throughout their life, and so that's why we use those as an IDing feature, because no matter if the animal is 1 year old or if it's 13 years old, you know, it'll still have that same pattern. And so even though the ears might change and there might be scarring on the eyes and the face, and you know, the whole demeanor or the whole kind of appearance of this animal will change in terms of its size, those spots will seldom do that. So it's always good just to use those, and like I say, why it is used as an IDing marker. But it is such a beautiful afternoon. The sun is just starting to get low. There's also this nice breeze that's just picked up, and the temperature is starting to drop quite nicely. And so I'm hoping that what we're going to get now is a situation where he's going to maybe start to think about waking up. There are 2 other cars that I think are coming to join us, and maybe that sort of movement of vehicles might get him to start sort of paying attention a little bit more. I did see those Impalas. They're actually through that gap again now. So, Sens, if you look in that gap, you might be able to see them. They're far, far away, a little bit more to the right. So there, that little gap up there. They just starting to come out of that thicket and starting to walk in this general direction. You can just make them out on the sort of top left side of that, where there's a little tree. There we go. Is it an Impala or is it a kudu? Looks like an Impala. There it is, an Impala just on the left side of the screen. So slowly but surely they're making their way down. There goes a vehicle and people's heads. It's almost like a freaky Halloween movie, and it's just these ghostly heads going past in a frame. But so the Impalas are still far away. Like I say, I was hoping that they would start moving down, and they obviously are moving towards these open sections in order to be able to spot any predators that might be around, because they know predators will now start getting moving, especially as it gets cooler and that sun starts to set a little bit. So you're going to get that situation. So I'm not surprised that they are moving out into the open. And there we go. There's Hosana. He's just woken up a little bit. Hello, boy. I don't think it's going to be very long. Like I say, a car just arrived, and that's maybe why he's just had a look who's behind him. Right, now, while our leopard looks around, and hopefully he'll be able to pick up those Impalas that are moving in the background, let's go back across to James Henry and the beautiful older sister of Hosana.
Well, what we have there is 2 molecules of the cub. Oh, they're gone. Yes, it was just a little flash of that white tail of the youngster in the den there. We got one brief view of a little face. She stuck it down into the gap at the bottom of the log, and then she disappeared again. So she's obviously awake and probably thinking about coming outside. But as I say, I'm afraid we're going to have to move out fairly soon. I think Mike is on his way here. I'm going to hold on for as long as I can. So Louise, don't go anywhere. We'll probably have to leave in the next 2 minutes. But maybe we'll just get one more glimpse of the little thing. I've got my binoculars trained there. Now, Deadhead, you're wondering if leopards scout for new den sites before they move their cubs. Almost certainly, Deadhead, and especially before they're born. She'll scout out a number of different den sites before they're born, just before she gives birth. And then I suspect she'll know where all of those are as soon as she does give birth. And then, of course, on her travels, on her moving around, on her hunting and territorial marking, she will find other suitable spots. So I would imagine that it's probably fairly seldom that she picks the cub up and just moves with it, hoping to find somewhere. I'm pretty sure that she would know exactly where she was going to take it. Yeah, the tail's back there, Vim. Can you see it? Everyone, it is just underneath the widest piece of grass you can see there. There's a sort of blurry white patch in the middle. It just moved there. There, it's moving. There we go. That's the cub. 2 molecules of cub. Well done, everybody. What a sighting we've had, eh? Yeah. difficult to quantify the wonderment. I think we should definitely post that on social media. People will come rushing in their droves to see our show. It's going to make Gangnam Style look like a high school editing project. No, alas, not moving out at this stage. I don't think we can be far from the little thing moving out. Thandi seems to be ready for suckling now. She's lying with her belly facing the cub. But the timid little thing ain't coming out. Obviously not particularly hungry at this stage. It's always interesting, of course, to ask the question about lone cubs versus cubs that are born to litters, and how different they are and how different their behavior is, and whether it has some kind of long-lasting effect on them into adulthood, as we think it does with children. And I wonder if there wasn't another cub, if they wouldn't both be out having a bit of a play now, encouraged by each other. Because this little thing, although it's definitely awake, probably dozing from time to time, doesn't really have a companion to encourage it out of bed. Of course, Thandi's showing absolutely no signs of wanting to get up at all. Come on, you little blighter, come out. Mercifully, the sun is beginning to sink, which means that the violence of the temperature has dissipated somewhat. I can just see that little bit of tail. That's all there is, I'm afraid. Hello, kitty, kitty, bang, bang. You're wondering if the cub is staying inside the log there to stay cool. I think she probably is. I'm sure it is much cooler in there than it is outside. But she could easily be outside, you know, lying in the shade there would be pretty cool. So no, I think that's just where she stays when she's hot, or not when she's hot, when she's just trying to stay safe. Mike, just keep coming. So I think you'll find that once she gets just a little bit older, am I correct in saying, I mean, I got back here, she had just been born when I got back 6 weeks ago. Was it 6 weeks ago? Yes, because I was here for 4 weeks. So I think this cub is now 6 weeks old, almost exactly 6 weeks old. And so you'll probably find in the next 2 weeks or so, starting to spend less and less time in this kind of covered den situation, and will start to rest more in thick bush and in trees. The den will start to become less and less central part of the little cub's life. Unfortunately, at the moment, a very big part of this animal's life, refusing to show herself to us. There, oh, I got a visual of the face there. Brief view of the face. Yeah, there we go. There. Little ears. Hooray. Hello, tiny thing. Alright, I'm afraid as she looks like she's going to come out, we're going to have to leave. Mike, just stand by there. Alright, everybody, I'm afraid that's it. Okay, let's go. Wahlberg's eagle. Let's go back across to Hosana and we'll see what else we can find up and around the waterholes now.
Well, Hosana is still very sleepy, so not nearly as much movement as what seems to be going on with James, and it seems the little one is being a bit shy this afternoon, but I'm sure it will be out and about and full of beans and nonsense as it has been in some of the previous sightings we've had. But Impala's still far away. There's not really much has changed here, other than the fact that the light is just getting absolutely beautiful now. It's starting to become a much more golden coloration. The temperature finally is reaching that is fairly normal, and like I say, it's a bit of a breeze. So big little stretch from Hosana. You can see he's just kind of pushing his legs out and back to sleep again. So his head up didn't last very long at all. He just groomed his paw a little bit and then flopped his head straight back down again and is still having a really good nap. Now, interestingly enough, not too far from where we are right now, inside Torchwood, so directly over my kind of right shoulder, is quarantine. Apparently he's inside Torchwood. He's quite far north of us, but he is coming further and further west all the time in Torchwood. I've really been interested to see his kind of movement. He seems to be coming slowly but surely more towards Cheetah Cutline, and I wonder what that's going to mean in terms of Tingana, and whether Tingana starts to go back in that direction and kind of have a look around. It seems as though poor Tingana is being squeezed at the moment, much like Mvula did. Mvula got the exact same treatment between Shavambalana, Tingana and various others, and so he's also got the same problem facing him, and being an aging leopard, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he sticks around in this area or he puts up a fight from quarantine. But quarantine is definitely starting to push further and further west, and I'll be interested to see if maybe tomorrow morning he doesn't head towards Cheetah Cutline. So we'll definitely go and sort of follow up in that area later, but I don't know if Hosana is going to move too much in the next little bit. I really think that he's probably in all likelihood going to have a massive nap right now. He's completely fatigued. You can see there's not much movement there at all, and nothing is really around to stimulate any sort of movement. If we had impalas that were really close by, or warthogs or something like that, that would then be a good indicator of something happening. But at the moment the impalas are still so far away, I don't even think he even knows that they're there, and so the chances of him moving in that direction is probably very slim at this stage. I think he's also probably had a really hot day, and so better just to wait until that sun is down and it's much cooler and darker to start moving than it is to actually move now. The other thing is that these leopards at the moment will not be doing too much hunting in the sort of late part of the night, and the reason for that is because it's full moon at the moment. So I'm pretty sure that they'll start hunting as it gets dark and try and maximize that little time frame before the full moon is up, and they're actually trying to kind of then having to compete with that full moon. You'll find that the number of kills decreases quite heavily in the full moon period as opposed to when it is the new moon. So pretty sure Hosana will wait until around sunset, and then he'll be up and moving in just that little period before the moon rise, and then he'll probably find early tomorrow morning he'll also be on the move again. But I'm interested to see where he goes from here, whether he goes south back towards the dam, towards sort of Chitwa Dam side, or if he goes north into Djuma and starts going to move around Leadwood and back down towards Twin Dams. But it's been so long since I've seen him at Twin Dams that it would be really nice to have him back in that area again. It was such a wonderful thing in the winter of this last year to be able to just go and find some sort of, you know, we'll just go down to Twin Dams and there either Hosana or Tumba would be sitting, and so we long for those days again, and hopefully we will see him moving back in that direction. Is that leaf giving you a bit of trouble, Hosana? You see every now and then he just flicks his ear, and I'm sure it's because of a little bit of grass and leaves and things like that that keep touching that sensitive hair. You can see when the wind blows a little bit, kind of blows in his direction, and every now and then I think they just touch his ear a little bit, and that causes him just to flick every now and then. Also insects, like I say, there were a number of flies earlier in the day that were around, and so I would imagine they've also been giving him a bit of a tough time. Vehicles are moving, so let's see, maybe he's going to poke his head up at some point shortly. I don't know if he will though. He seems as though he is very fast asleep at this stage. Nope, doesn't look like it. That vehicle is busy moving out, and so I highly doubt that he is going to wake up at all. My World, Your Music, you're wondering why a leopard's spots are called rosettes. Well, if you have a look at the spot itself, it's not a solid dot or polka dot like you would see on a cheetah's coat. So their spots basically look as though they've kind of blossomed out, if you want to call it that. They're very similar to that in the shape of a rosette, and so a rose. So that's where the sort of spotted, well, the rosettes comes from. It's this sort of spot that's broken apart, and each kind of spot has this cream little center to it, and then these little black dots on the outside, and like I say, very much resembles that of the pattern of a flower. And so that's where, as far as I know, where it comes from and why they are called rosettes as opposed to spots themselves. Let's see if he's going to just wake up a little bit. Like I say, there's a bit of movement from some of the other vehicles, and therefore you might find that he does decide to wake up a little bit and start moving around. Nope, I don't think so. I think he's going to have a proper nap. And so what we might do is I'll probably spend 5 more minutes or so, and then I want to go and just try and check and see if there isn't anything else around, maybe down towards Chitwa Dam quickly. And so while we do that, I believe James has got a beautiful big pachyderm that is slowly moving towards him.
Well, it's just moved past us, and while it is beautiful looking, its smell is quite spectacular. This elephant bull, as in must, you can see there that he's leaking from his, well, from his penis, basically. He's got what we call green penis syndrome, and it smells like sweet, smoky leather. It is very powerful indeed, and I think he's probably heading towards the waterhole for a bit of a drink, so I think that we'll probably just follow him. If it's all the same to you. Liam, are you happy to follow him? Well, there's no real... I was just wondering if there isn't another way round. There is, but I think we'll just follow him anyway. The smell is really quite overpowering. It really is spectacular. And that, of course, leaves a signal to all the ladies that he is in must. Not that they will actually go looking for him, come to think of it. But I guess when he finds them, so they will be most impressed by the smell of his eau de cologne. It's quite interesting to do an experiment and pitch up at a bar smelling like this and see whether ladies would find that attractive or not. I think probably not. Although you did, I don't know if you still can, you certainly used to be able to buy, what was it called? It was called buck scent. That's right, I remember. There was a guy at university who bought himself, somehow he got hold of a bottle of buck scent. And he used it in a nightclub one evening, and I'm led to believe that more women talked to him than they did normally. He was one of these sort of irritatingly good-looking fellows, so it may have had nothing to do with the buck scent. Now, Scarlett, you want to know how close to camp they get? Scarlett, they get right into camp. I've woken up at night to cracking branches and seen that my room was darker than normal even, stuck my head out the window and basically almost put my head into the skin of an elephant feeding there. So they get right into the camp. I mean, our little camp itself is situated around a courtyard, so it's unlikely that they would come into that courtyard area because they'd probably feel quite trapped by it. But there was a fig tree, a very nice fig tree that used to grow just outside the courtyard within our car park area, and that was totaled by elephants probably about 18 months ago. I think it was during the drought. He's having a very leisurely evening amble up towards the waterhole. There was a herd of elephants that came past here earlier, so the chances are that he's tracking them, and if there's an estrus female there, he will be able to pick that up from her urine. I often wonder, do elephants look at each other? I mean, this chap's only got one tusk. You know, if you see a fellow with one arm, we know that men that are, or women that are not symmetrical to each other or don't look symmetrical have a tougher time than those that are symmetrical. And I often wonder with an elephant if that isn't the same, because they so often are missing bits and pieces of themselves, no tail or no tusk or half a trunk, does that make a difference? Does that make them less attractive? I don't know. Now I promise we will get a better angle of this elephant. I don't believe that this is his best angle. Now, Kathy in Ohio, you're wondering how old elephant bulls are when they first start must. There's quite a lot of debate around this, so I don't know if there's so much debate as I've read a number of things about it. I have read that they can start coming into must from as early as 15 years old. Now, that won't be a full-blown must like this guy's in here. That can apparently last for just a few days, and then it'll disappear, possibly even less than that. And then as they get older and older, it can last for months at a time. And this chap, I would say, is around about 35 years old or so, and so his must could last a few months. But they probably have their first full-blown proper must when they're about 25 or so. No, Gemma, this is also a very good question. You say, is there a specific season when they go into must? There isn't. They can go into must at any time of the year. And like I say, the older they get, the longer that period is. And I don't believe that, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think what triggers it, or, why they should come into must, and I'm not sure what it is. They can lose a huge amount of water in a day. They can apparently lose up to 100 litres when they're in full must like this, because he's leaking continuously as he walks along here. And you can imagine how much more then that they have to drink. You probably find that in areas where they cannot get water, or where water is more difficult to come by, obviously the Sabi Sands is not one of those areas because there's pumped water all year round, and the Kruger, not so much the same as some parts of Botswana, for example, where elephants live, where the winter is a very tough time, or the lack of rainy season is or the dry season is a very tough time. I think you'll probably find that the propensity for them to go into must during the dry season is that much lower. He's still about 300 meters from the dam or so, but let's just keep following. Yeah, no, Roshni, I'm sure it is certainly a danger. You say, do they get dehydrated? I mean, I imagine that physiologically the body would stop producing that evil-smelling urine before the elephant became dehydrated. So I mean, there are obviously huge numbers of self-regulatory processes that go on in our bodies, physiological processes that are either considered essential or non-essential, and of course this would be a non-essential one for survival. And so were he to become dehydrated, I'm sure that dripping would cease almost immediately. It's a little bit like the best example I know of course, is that when women are malnourished, of course, they don't have their monthly cycles. That can eventually fall away because the body, and then it will come back again when the women are, or when the women are better nourished again. And that's, of course, well, it serves two purposes, I suppose. The first purpose is to make sure that there is no physiological strain on a potential mother, and of course to make sure that there's no wasted effort in trying to carry a baby to term in adverse conditions. Now, the same thing is going along not so much for the baby, of course. Suddenly see we're looking at a Franklin there. Very nice. Trying to think of an example for birds. I can't think of one for birds. Anyway, so that's the story with the elephants. He will stop producing urine if he starts to get dehydrated. He will eventually make his way to the dam. He's walking, you know what, he's walking at a speed slightly slower than a human being. I could definitely walk faster than this elephant's walking. Ghost Rider, you say they're slightly more aggressive when they're in must. Yes, well, people will say that they're more aggressive. As I've banged on to many of you many times, I dislike using the word aggressive out here at all. They can certainly be more cantankerous. Aggression implies some kind of innate violence, if you know what I mean. And I'm not sure, while I'm sure that there are some more aggressive elephants than other elephants, I think that it's like frustration. I don't think they're aggressive so much as frustrated, which means that if you irritate them, then they're going to react that much more quickly than they would if they weren't in must. So I think you could consider this animal a frustrated animal looking for females, trying to kind of have some sort of release to this tremendous drive that he's got now to go and find and mate with females. And so if you get him on a particularly frustrated day and you do something that irritates him, well then yes, he might react and lose his temper much more quickly than he would have otherwise. Now, he's obviously turned away from the dam of felines.
Well, indeed, because this is a very pleasant surprise. As we were coming past Twin Dams, 4 little heads poked up from next to the road. So it seems as though it's the 4 Styx cubs that are just that have been left in this area. Why they are right next to the road like this, I'm not quite sure. I can't see any sign of an adult anywhere here. It just looks like the 4 of them that are all having a nice little nap in the shade. So why they're so exposed as little ones like this, I'm really not quite sure. They should theoretically be in a little bit of a denser area and certainly not next to a main road where there's cars whizzing up and down, but nice to see them nonetheless. They, like I say, are not accompanied by the parents or by mom, so I don't think I'm going to be spending too much time unless mom makes an appearance here. We ultimately don't want to attract too much attention to little cubs, as much as it's exciting to see the little ones, and it's always epic to see little baby lions. It's important to remember that us sitting here does attract attention to what might not, well, to many animals, and they might then come and investigate, and these little cubs might have been hidden and not sort of drawn any attention had we not been here. So we won't spend too long if mom doesn't appear. I want to just try and check around them a little bit. They are on the southern side of the road in Little Gowrie, and I know that some of the Styx Pride is apparently on Triple M close to Arathusa driveway, and so they are quite far from this section. Maybe mom is looking just somewhere close by, because they seem very relaxed with us. They don't try. Suspect if mom was here that all 4 of them would be lying quite close to her. I highly doubt they would be lying far away from her, especially every single one of them, because all 4 are there and they look pretty healthy. It doesn't look like there's too much wrong with them, so it doesn't seem as though they've got too much of that mange that some of the other Pride members have got, and they look pretty good. They could probably do with a meal. It depends on how long they've been left for, but this is fairly common when it comes to lion cubs. Now, before we get any further, if you have a look there's some ants that are busy running around in the foreground. Now, those pugnacious ants, if you compare them to the size of the lion cub, it gives you an idea of just how small these little lions are. So even though they're a few months old now, they are quite little in comparison. If you think about how small an ant is that ant is probably about the size of my fingernail, and so it gives you an idea of just how big the lions are. It's a nice little scale reference if you're wondering the size of these little guys. But like I say, they seem as though they're also much like Hosana. They're hot and tired. It's been probably a long day for everyone involved. It's not pleasant if you're a cat in this weather. You've got fur and it's stiflingly hot, and it's really can't be easy for them. So I'm pretty sure they're just spending the day. Oh, bless you, Senzo. Are you alright there, buddy? Okay, no worries. So Senzo has had a little sneeze, which gave that one cup of a fright, and it's this time of year you often do get sniffles, and poor Jamie struggles with it because of the pollen release of some of the flowers and those kind of things. Then the inflorescence on some of the grasses to activate the sinuses, and you tend to sneeze and sniff your way through the day. So hopefully Sens is not being affected by that too much, but still surprised to see from a little leopard cub to lion cub to actually between Kenya and South Africa. So Francis from Israel, you're wondering how the main situation, situation is with these cubs. Well, at the moment, it seems as though, okay, I mean, I haven't seen them for quite some time, so I honestly haven't really had a good enough look, and the way that they're lying at the moment, I can't really see too much of it. And they look fairly healthy. They look as though they've got a nice even covering of fur. Their ears don't look as though they've scabbed in any way, so, and their legs don't look too bad either. So you see their ears look fairly healthy there. There doesn't look like there's any scabbing or sort of loss of fur. There's marks here, but of cubs, they do have a few little blemishes and nicks and cuts in places, but they look pretty healthy. They actually look really good, considering the rest of the pride has struggled with this mange, and I'm pretty sure that the Styx pride is starting to rebuild after it. And you know, the wetter weather that we've had is certainly going to help in eradicating that mange and helping them bounce back from it and becoming much healthier as a pride. Now also the thing is that hopefully what's going to happen is that these ones, because they haven't really contracted it too heavily just yet, they'll only get it a little bit later if they do get it, and that means that their immune system should hopefully be a little stronger, and that means that they'll be able to hopefully survive it, much like their older siblings have. The older siblings, while they do have traces of mange, are looking fairly healthy the last time I saw them. So these guys look as though they're doing absolutely fine, and I think they'll be just right, hopefully, if they are protected by their mom and the Birminghams and no other males or anything like that comes into the area. But unfortunately, we are going to leave them. Like I say, it's that time of the day where there's things like hyenas that are around and moving, and whenever you're close to a water point, there's all kinds of things that come past. And so Hosana is also not very far away, and like I said, I don't want to attract too much attention to these little ones without mom, so I think I'm going to leave them here and carry on. But what a nice surprise to have them as well as the leopard for the afternoon. Right, while I carry on and see what else I can rummage out of the bag for the afternoon, let's go back to James and those big pachyderms that he's been following around this afternoon.
Well, the big pachyderm that we've been following around has failed to come to the water as predicted, and is now pulling branches out of that marula tree. And off to our right hand side we have got, just behind the, or in front of the setting sun, we have got what Virm and I both agree are the cutest baby antelope, the little wildebeest. Look at them. Two of which we saw being born. Now, we've counted 6 here. Do we know if we've had any more than that? Oh, there's another elephant coming. Oh, that just stayed there, Virm. That's a lovely shot. Sorry, I really did throw you under the bus slightly, but there's another elephant coming along there. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous picture of those wildebeest. Sorry, I gave up looking at the elephants. That's just too pretty for words. Isn't that wonderful? Ha! And some impalas. All of them watching the sun go down. Thoroughly delighted with life, as they should be, of course. The Ngahuma pride is nowhere to be seen. I'd also be delighted if I was a baby wildebeest. Bubbling casinas calling behind me. They do have gormless faces, I must confess. I can't believe they actually are gormless, though. Gosh, that's wonderful. You know, it's really not bad to come back to work when this is what you have to look at, you know? In a little while, my brother will have to go back to Johannesburg and back to the bank to work. And I guarantee you that he won't sit there at the end of his first day thinking, my goodness, how wonderful to be back at work. Hello, Bobby. You say today is your anniversary. Nice to remember, or easy to remember on this day. You started watching Safari Live a year ago today. You say you enjoy it very much, and thank you for teaching you about the bush. Well, Bobby, our thanks go to you, of course, because without the likes of you and everyone else who watches the show, it would be a completely meaningless thing that we do here. Because, well, while VM is fascinated at the university by everything that I say, I guess it would be a little bit of a waste expending all of the stuff on just VM. So thank you, Bobby, for watching, and I hope that you will continue to watch for a very long time. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes over just this last year, and hopefully there will be a lot more this year too. Lots of different places and adventures that we'll all go on together. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for this, the 1st of January 2018, the afternoon drive. We will see you tomorrow again, of course, at 0500 over here in South Africa. Until then, stay safe and happy wherever you happen to be in the world. Happy New Year.